too.
I've had to say, I'm sorry, you don't seem comfortable. I don't know if you really want to do this. Why don't you think about it and come back? This should be something fun. We don't want to hurt Rosie. We don't want to scare you. We don't want to hurt Rosie. So you have that power. Obviously, we want to make sure the guest experience is like our top priority. So you want to make sure you're giving every guest that comes in a really great experience. But sometimes that experience means that you have to remind them it's okay to be afraid of something, and they don't have to do it.
And the nice thing about this exhibit is it's the only one you get to sit down while talking to visitors at. So every other one, you should always be standing and walking around and never, ever, ever sitting down. This is the one place you have the excuse to sit down while talking to visitors. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you guys, one of the best things you can say if someone's really scared, sorry, I found this super helpful, and John actually did it, and John can be pretty blunt, but it was awesome. And he was like, you know what, kid kept pulling away, and he was like, you know what, Rosie cannot hurt you at all, but you could really hurt Rosie. So is this something that, do you think you could hold still for me? Because you could really hurt Rosie. And I think that really gets to people. And right then and there, you'll typically be able to see whether they will or won't do it. Because none of them want to hurt Rosie. So.
And the beehive, too, is a good talking point.
Yeah, the beehive is great. So
point
why don't we, so here's the rainforest, and now in every ecosystem pod, these are called pods, in every ecosystem pod, we have a top carnivore, a secondary carnivore, an herbivore, and a detritivore. One of the things that you'll hear is all the time is, what's a detritivore? People don't know that word. Well, in the insect world, there's not really any insects that eat both fresh meat and fresh vegetables. That's an omnivore, okay? Ours feed on decaying meat, decaying plants and animals. That's what makes them a detritivore. So in every pod, we show those ecosystems. And then in this one, we really focus on, where these habitats are. So we talk about the habitats, but if you look at the top, there's these really great maps that I had to hand draw. These really great maps that show you where are the deserts in the world, where are the grasslands in the world, where are the rainforests in the world. And one of the interesting things that I found when I was actually making these maps is some of these actually got reclassified due to what humans do to the land. So for example, Haiti, which is right in here, Haiti actually used to be a rainforest, but because of slash and burn, it is now considered a desert. So they have actually completely destroyed the ecosystem, and turned it into a whole new ecosystem. So those animals actually either had to adapt or they died. So the Haitian centipede, which I wish I could have out again, but he's a little escape artist, if you guys remember that, he actually had to adapt. He used to live in a rainforest environment, and now he lives in a desert environment. So over here we have the comparative tarantulization. So what we really want people to do in here is really think like a scientist. We want you to think, critically about what you're looking at. So you've got a rainforest tarantula versus a grassland tarantula. So some things you're going to notice, if you have a chance, you can say like, hey kids, what do you notice? They can also flip these cards. So it tells them rainforest tarantulas have longer legs, they're a lot flatter, they're going to lay up against this bark. Whereas like you can see this guy, he's like made himself like a little burrow. So these guys live in burrows, these guys live in trees. So it's a really great way for kids to kind of visually see the difference between animals living in different ecosystems. In the grassland, same thing. We have a top carnivore, secondary detritivore, and herbivore. So our herbivore is the dark-leaf beetle, herbivore, detritivore is the millipede. We have our black widow. Now these guys are really popular because everybody knows black widows. So in my animal handling classes, I talk about venom. So western black widows are the only medically significant spider species in Colorado. So everybody's seen them. What some people will notice, they'll say, wait, there's more than one. Can they live together? Well, if there's enough food, any animal can live together. So, but you'll notice they really just stay in their areas. So if you come back tomorrow, they're going to really be in the same areas. They're, very territorial. Now, if this girl over here went to this girl's side, one of them would become dinner. But they really like to stay in their areas. So, and then we have our freshwater invertebrates. And I really pushed hard for this exhibit to go in because, believe it or not, water is actually important to grassland. And what you're going to see is you're going to see sporadic pockets of water in grassland. So you're going to see like lakes, you're going to see streams, you're going to see marshes, you're going to see ponds, and these animals really take on that. So, for example, like the giant water bug can actually fly, and what they'll do is, like, if their little area that they're in dries up, the adults can fly to a different area. So these guys have really adapted to those really extreme changing environments in the grassland. That's what we really want to point out is, like, in the grassland, I mean, we've got, look at Colorado. Colorado's, you've got winter, summer, spring, and fall. Those are some pretty extreme temperature changes. Whereas, like, in the rainforest, it's like 70 degrees, or 70 to 100 degrees and really humid. In the desert, you have those different temperature spikes, but it's a little bit different than the grassland. You're not going to get those seasons. So these animals have adapted to survive to that. And then our beehive. In our beehive, there's a couple of different, things that we can use for interpretation. First off, against the wall here, if you guys don't know, I highly suggest reading our Buzz About Bees. And it talks about the different kind of bees in every hive. And then we talk about pine beetle bloom. Now, pine beetles are a problem in Colorado. Everybody's heard about it. Not many people understand pine beetle blooms. So everybody wants to demonize pine beetles, but the reality is pine beetles are actually an important part of a healthy ecosystem. The key word in that statement is healthy. In an imbalanced ecosystem, an unhealthy ecosystem, so we've been in drought. Even though we had a really wet, winter, we're still in drought. What happens in drought times is that pine beetles normally attack sick trees. But if we're in a drought or if times are really hard, pine beetles will indiscriminately attack any tree. And that's what's happening, is that's why pine beetles are such a problem right now, is because they're attacking healthy and unhealthy trees. And that's why we have these pine beetle killed forests that are happening. So if they open up this bark, they can actually see we've got pine beetles, and you can see the galleries that the pine beetles make, the larvae make. And then we talk a little bit about how drought causes the pine beetles to thrive. And then the beehive itself, there's a recording of the beehive sounds. Don't offer the information that that's a recording. If people ask, you can tell them it's a recording of the hive, but you don't want to tell people that's just a recording.
Yeah.
People want to believe, you want people to be excited about it. And then you've got the hive itself, and the bees do come in and out all year long. And they go, and over here, when it didn't get reset this morning.
It did.
Oh, it did?
Yes.
So did you push all 4 buttons? You have to push all 4 buttons now. So for some reason,
It went to 0.
Yeah.
But
Oh, you know what? That's how many went out today. There's so many went out. Okay.
it went to 0.
So, yeah, so 999 or 9,999 bees went out today. Now, there's not 9,000 bees in this hive. That's how many times they went out. Now, it doesn't count them coming in, it only counts bees going out. So bees take that many trips out. So you can tell people that, no, there's not 9,000 bees in this hive, but that's how many times the bees have gone out today. So it's a really fun interpretive tool. People like bees, and people are really worried about bees. So it's a really great time to talk about not using pesticides. People always want to know about colony collapse disorder. So colony collapse disorder, and you guys probably won't remember this, but I highly recommend you research it. Colony collapse disorder, what they found is that bees living in agricultural areas are actually less healthy than bees living in cities because of pesticides. Those pesticides actually wear down the bees' immune systems, and then this virus-fungus symbiotic relationship take over, and they actually kill the bees. Bees don't want to make the rest of their hive sick, so they leave and go away from the hive. They die away from the hive. So that's why they were saying bees are disappearing, because the bees actually will leave the hive to not make the other hive sick. Other things that will happen is there's these varroa mites, and varroa mites live in the trachea of bees. In normal conditions, those varroa mites are actually helpful. They help clean the bees. But in times where there's drought, or if the hive is unhealthy, those varroa mites can actually kill the bees. So, what a really good teaching tool for this, you guys don't have to remember all that, but what I would say is really emphasize not using pesticides. What people do is they don't realize that what you're buying, the Raid in a can, is deadly, to animals. They don't think about that. They just think, oh, I'm going to use all my spiders on the spiders in my house. Well, those spiders are controlling something else. I would be more worried, if you're seeing a bunch of spiders in your house, I'd be more worried about what they're eating as opposed to the spiders themselves. You can also affect, other populations of animals. So, try to tell people to not use pesticides. Try to use healthy alternatives to pesticides, as opposed to pesticides themselves, because their pesticides are bad. So, over here we show our scorpions that glow under fluorescent or black lights. During living lights, if you guys are here, these guys we highlight that fluorescence or bioluminescence in our invertebrates. So, and then we've got, same thing back here, we've got a burrow that kids get to walk to hold Rosie, and there are animals within the burrow, and those animals are animals that would actually live, inside burrows, or, hide in the sand or substrate in the desert to be able to survive. So, lots of teaching areas, lots of times for you to talk to people, but again, when you're in here, and it's busy, you want to stay at Rosie, and if you need help, please call for help.